You are getting all four outside corners in one box. All four outside corners in one box. Now every time you get one in a corner, let us know you work in that corner like you out on Santa Monica Boulevard on Hump Day trying to make some fucking money. Talk about okay, but you better get that damn money when it's due at the end of the week. This month is over. Black History Month is gone. Damn it, man. So anyway, get out there, shake your hands with proper, and what? Take out that coat.
I don't know. I'm not good at time. But it was somewhere in the early '80s, and I moved here to become a playwright. No, I was already a playwright. Excuse me. And at Cal State Fullerton, they had produced a bunch of plays of mine, and I had done some other stuff in Orange County. I was from Orange County. And so I decided to move to LA because I was going to become a movie writer. And I was very naive. I just thought I could write a movie and then it would be made.
I was born in a small town in Central California by the name of Turlock. Oh, gee. When I was young, I remember seeing a population of 7,500. So needless to say, it remained a small town. I left there mostly out of fear, and that fear was homophobia. It was a very right-wing Republican city, and I didn't feel a place there. Living with Democratic parents, it was more or less, I more or less escaped. When I moved to Los Angeles, I did menial grunt work like any 19-year-old kid would do. From there, I had a wonderful opportunity to go and work for Capitol Records, which I did for a number of years. I was promoted to work under the National Credit Manager, Credit Director, and in 1980, there was a huge record crunch where there were a number of layoffs. And I was new guy on the totem pole, and I was the first one to go. But it just so happened at that time in West Hollywood, there was this new vibe that was coming into the city, and it was a video bar, which was something brand new to us.
It was amazing because it was LA's first video nightclub, and MTV had just been created. So people were just so into videos, and there were just giant video screens everywhere. And you know, like Cyndi Lauper would come in, and Boy George would come in, and you know, and celebrities would hang out there, and it was the place to be. There was a video nightclub in New York, and this one, they were the only ones.
They wanted to open up an upscale Revolver, which was the name of the bar, Revolver. And yes, it did have a revolving door. Now, evidently, there was some kind of credence behind all of that and some kind of explanation, and I don't remember what it was. But I do know that what he was very adamant about was that it was not a gay bar, not a straight bar, but an everybody bar. Everybody was welcome. The interesting thing is most of us were hired because we all went to the same gym. It was as though that there was the cattle call over at the gym, and everybody was working out and doing an audition and not knowing it. So that's where a lot of the employees came from, I being one of them as well. So we created a family. We all started at the same time. We all opened the bar, even though I was one of the last hired. And we all looked after each other. We all liked each other. We all got along with each other. We all dished each other. We all teased each other. We yelled at each other. But, you know, we created this family.
I had to work, so that's how I got the job originally at Revolver, because my friend Joey, who had lived in Orange County, worked there. So I went and saw him and asked him if, you know, they could hire me as like a barback or something like that.
Joey Marzo. Joey, who we deemed as Gidget, because he was bouncy. He was kind of a staple for us and for the clientele that came in. Everybody loved Joey. He was adorable. He was very sweet and very wonderful. Probably one of the most sarcastic, squirrely little people you could ever come across.
But everybody loved him because he just had this really big personality, and he was buying everybody shots all the time, and you know, he didn't give a shit what anybody thought of him, and he just everybody wanted, like when Joey bartended, everybody came to his station because, you know, he was very entertaining. I always worried about Joey because he didn't eat right and he never slept and he really partied a lot and he drank a lot and he did a lot of drugs. And he started getting skinnier, but you know, I don't know, we just thought it was, you know, he was getting skinny. But then he went to the doctor and they diagnosed him with, they said it was amoebas and tuberculosis. And I remember him, like I saw him down in the office one day and he had brought a sandwich and he could like barely eat the sandwich, and it was just really like, I don't know, I mean, we were concerned. This is the thing that you have to know, is that right then nobody knew what was coming. So when Joey got sick, we were just like, oh, well, you know, he'll get better. That's just the way that life was.
On the count of three, we're all saying no false bingos ever. 1, 2, 3. No false bingos ever. The last person that said it, I slapped her in the mouth. I got your shoulder. You all right? Okay. That bitch almost saved me. Okay. Oh, you can sit down. We're done with you.
All right, I'm going to give you some rules. Our rules are very fun and very easy. Before we start each game, we're going to yell out, what's the name of the game? You're going to yell bingo. Then we're going to say how we play it. You're going to say loudly. Let's try that. What's the name of the game? Bingo! Good. How do we play it? Loudly! Good. Now I know you may be thinking, I'm turning 50, or there's a sheep in the restaurant. If you call a false bingo because you're not paying attention, there's a punishment for that, and it looks like this.
When a lot of people look back at the 80s and they look back at how fun it was, you know, everything was new. Like I said, videos were new. The city of West Hollywood was just becoming a city, and everything was very exciting and looking toward the future. And then, you know, all of a sudden you realize, you look at the rose sometimes and you forget about the thorns, and basically we experienced the thorns firsthand.
But I do remember Jeffrey was with us. We had a night manager. His name was James, I believe. And I was working the back bar and I was at full tilt. In other words, I'd probably downed a couple of double espressos and I was really rocking and rolling. In other words, the back bar was packed. It usually was. And the door opened and and I got this. And he said, Joey died. And it got around the bar really fast. It didn't take long ever for the word, quote unquote, of somebody's passing or somebody's death to get around.
You can't even imagine. It was crazy. Like you just looked at everyone around you like, oh, am I going to get it from them touching me? It's like, this is really like a full-blown epidemic, but no one knew how they were getting it.
Definitely, yeah. We were scared to death. We were afraid to touch each other. We were afraid to have sex. Even condoms were ridiculous, you know. And of course, nobody wanted to use a condom because the information about condoms wasn't there. You know, they weren't really pushing it out as they did later on in time. But we're talking 1982 here, 83. And that is a very, very ignorant time for all of us. We knew nothing. We had nothing. And AIDS was a death sentence. There was no turning back. Everybody that came down with HIV had died, one after another. If we weren't going to 1 or 2, we were going to 3 or 4 funerals a week.
Very much an evolution. It was very much an evolution of like, you lose somebody and then all of a sudden you start losing more and more and more, and then they tell you, oh, well, this is what this is, and this is affecting gay men in the community. And there's nothing that we can do about it.
Bitch, I knew who you were before you even knew who I was.
I'm a showgirl and an entertainer, I would say. I got some side gigs, not nothing X-rated, but I'm a showgirl and an entertainer.
Oh. She's the famous Calpurnia Adams, everybody.
Google it.
her. Seriously. I'm Roxy Wood. I have been performing, doing bingo for about 10 years. But I mean, I sing live, drag entertainer, all that fun stuff. I'm also a trans actress. I've been on a bunch of TV shows. Google me as well, Roxy Wood. Yes.
I think it's really great to talk about because I'm a trans woman and
So am I.
identify as a woman. But I started, many years ago, pre-transition, performing in the queer community, LGBT community, doing what people would call drag. I don't identify as a drag queen now, but I'm definitely exagerating the look and everything.
She knows how to put it on.
Just like Dolly Parton does, or
Beyonce.
Beyonce, anybody. I consider myself a showgirl now. What about you?
Same. The same thing, yeah. I mean, trans woman by day, slut by night. No, but drag, whatever. I mean, drag is just an overextension of what you're already doing in a way.
Right, and women can do drag too.
Yes,
it's
they
about,
do.
Yeah.
Okay, this shit ain't real,
Right.
right? It's not real.
Oh.
Oh. Well, I guess it is now.
Yeah, it's ours. We got the
It's
receipt.
real, but it's not real. It's
I
all
own
an
it.
illusion. See, it's an illusion. Okay.
I identify as a trans woman,
Me
but
too.
I identify really as a woman, but if there's some value in pushing further, I will say that I did transition.
So she's saying for the paycheck, she'll be whatever the hell you want her to be, okay?
Yeah, sure.
But you gotta write that check.
You got a paycheck, I got a job.
Oh, same.
As for the drag queens, they put a smile on our face. They always did. Come on, the drag queens were always there. They were always around. There has always been drag. There's been drag for decades, decades and decades. But now it's as though they had a job. It's not that they felt that there was, but they entertained us. They kept us happy. They helped us to forget. We would go to probe. We would ask where was so-and-so, and they'd be in the hospital, but there'd be a drag queen there that would entertain us, that would get up with a fan and start to fan dance, or just be ridiculous for some strange reason. And that strange reason just put a smile on our faces. I mean, in the late 70s, my partner Tom died of AIDS. Scott, in the early 80s, died of AIDS. Yet my boyfriend / doctor said to me, "You're fine." He said, "Everything looks good," which meant nothing because the HIV antibody test hadn't come out yet. So to me, that was a nebulous answer, but I trusted him. I did trust him. I did meet another gentleman who was going to become my partner for the next 8 years. He had gotten an HIV test, an HIV antibody test, because he was going to be coming into the country and become a citizen. I thought, well, if you're going to do it, then I ought to too. Seeing as we're in a committed monogamous relationship, I wanted to do this for us. And here's the interesting thing that was said to me that will resonate for the rest of my life. A very stringy, greasy-haired woman opened up my folder of my labs, and she said, "Before I tell you your results, what do you think your results were?" And on the inside, I said, "I don't know, bitch. Why don't you just fucking tell me?" And on the outside, I said, "I don't know. Would you please tell me my results?" Not a good thing to play with a person when their life feels that they're on the line. And she said, "You tested positive." And all of a sudden, my world crumbled. All of a sudden, everything that I built, everything I created, my relationship, shot, gone. That's where it all began. That's when my drug regimen started. That's when there was resistance that was shown in sequinavir, and I had to move on to another drug called Crixivan. And with that came the Crixivan farts that were equated with Crixivan. You know, all I had to do was kneel once, and it was very prevalent. There is a drug to increase testosterone. There is an HIV medication that goes once a day. This also includes a protease inhibitor in it. Remind me to tell you about the drug the doctor took me off of. Okay, we'll get to that later. Then then that is in combination with another medication, and in combination with another medication, both of which have side effects. So all three of those are giving me side effects as well. Wait, it gets better. Then there is the herpes control, which is Zovirax. So that's taken once a day. Then there's the vitamin B12 injections, which help to... HIV affects everything. It affects your hormonal system. It affects your triglycerides. You can throw your blood sugar out of whack. It can take your cholesterol and create plaque in your body. And it can make it easy to bring on the onset of herpes, which done through rectal sex can create a condyloma in the rectum, which is a wart, which is a form of, okay? So the whole idea is to try and keep everything at bay. But all of this came with a price. With these drugs, there are side effects. Those side effects affect certain organs of the body, even the skin. The skin is an organ. And with that come those side effects. You want to counterbalance those side effects. Most doctors want to counterbalance them with more drugs, which also brings side effects. So you want to counterbalance those drugs that are counterbalancing the side effects with counterbalancing drugs. And it's an endless cycle. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to counterbalance with food, with health. You know, foods have a lot of sugar content in it. Corn, fresh corn, high in sugar. Breads create insulin, high in sugar. So all of these things I've got to kind of cut out, and I've got to watch. I have to watch my fat intake. And what about things like meat, eggs, fish? Where are the fish swimming? Is it clean? Is it a hatchery? Is where the cows are raised? How clean is it? Are the chickens that are being produced, are they mass produced? Are they huddled in together? Do they have fecal matter all over themselves and then bring that over to the egg laying process? Are they injected with hormones? Are those hormones then coming into my system and then ruining my system or damaging my system? It's this trickle-down effect that's going on that one has to be very careful with. So I keep the foods in my system as clean as humanly possible, and I cook. I cook a lot. So I try and make it a big point that anything that goes into my system is clean food. Even if I do eat pork or bacon, which I don't. No pork, no bacon, no lamb, no duck. You know, it's just all fatty, fatty foods. But if there were bacon that goes down my gullet, I'll make sure there are no nitrites in it. Nothing that will act as any kind of a counterbalance to all of the clean that I'm trying to put in to keep my system strong. Because bottom line, it's the food that's going to counterbalance all of the nasty or all of the drugs that are keeping me alive right now. How's that?
I mean, that's a lot.
It is a lot. Isn't it a lot?
That's crazy.
So you asked me what I'm doing for a living? That's my
Taking care of yourself.
That's my full-time job, yeah. And I want to work outside of that. So that's the conundrum. You see, we're given this, which was once death sentence, and now we're given a life sentence, but there's a price to pay for that life sentence. And people don't understand the dynamics of that life sentence in that there are things you have to do to be able to maintain this stasis, to be able to be just like you and everybody else and be like any other person walking on the earth.
After I left Revolver, I did a lot of like promotional jobs, and I worked for motion picture companies, putting on events for films and stuff like that. And then I was working for a gym. It's called, I can't remember. And but it was right on Santa Monica Boulevard. And I was like, I gave tours. It was a weird job. It was a great job. But this woman came in and she said, I work for a pharmacy on Wilshire. It's an HIV specialty pharmacy, and I'd love for you to come and be a patient advocate, like help me like create this reading and resource center, because at that time the only places that people with HIV and AIDS were going were to the doctor and then to the pharmacy, because it was the good drugs, they didn't have them then. It was just AZT and stuff like that. So she stole me away. So I went over there and I created this real fun thing so that when people came in, we were playing rock music and we were showing videos, and I created a newsletter, a healthy newsletter for them, and I gave seminars and all of that. And then one of the people I had from the seminar was the nutritionist at AIDS Project Los Angeles, and she stole me from there to come over to AIDS Project Los Angeles, and that's where I was working when I started Legendary Bingo. So that's what it is. So I was working for AIDS Project Los Angeles, and they were doing events that I thought were way too expensive for normal people, like $1,000 a person, whatever. And so I went to them and I said, you know, I'd like to go out in the community and do smaller events that normal people could go to, and it would help spread the word about the organization, and they would be fun. So I went out to different restaurants, bars, whatever, to have them put on like little events. And there was a coffee house called Stonewall Gourmet Coffee, and they said, why don't we do bingo? And I said, all right, I honestly didn't care. So it was just me and a little bingo wheel sitting on this little counter in this little coffee shop that maybe fit 40 people. And the first time, there was maybe like 15 people. And then I went back next week and there was like 25 people, and it, you know, it kind of kept going like that. And then one day, the owner said, we have a guy that works here who does a drag character called the Fabulous Bel Air. Why don't you ask him to do it with you? I said, sure. So then it was the Fabulous Bel Air and me doing it. And it just, something I thought would last a couple of months, it just kept going, and it just kept getting more and more people. And then like celebrities started showing up, and people were playing bingo on their cars outside, and like you couldn't move. It got scary sometimes in that place. It was like, you know, people just jammed in, you know. And then people started writing about us, and it was just, it was, I don't ever know how to explain what's happened, because it just all sort of happened, you know, and it just keeps happening. I don't think I've ever really, it's going to sound weird to say, I don't think I've ever really tried that hard to promote it. I mean, I have, but at the same time, like, it's just, I don't know. And Bingo Boy, which is me, came about because there was a ad for a protein shake on the counter. And it was this little boy with like goggles on, and he was in a little bathing suit, and he had his hands like this. And I thought, oh, that'd be funny. So I took him and I put Bingo Builds Better Bodies next to it. And that was like our first promotional ad, because I was sort of like making fun of the whole West Hollywood muscle thing. And someone from the LA Weekly made t-shirts out of it. And I told them, I don't own that image of that boy. You can't use that. So I went home and I cut off his head, and I took a picture of me when I was 5, and I put my head on his body, and that's how Bingo Boy was created. And then eventually, now he's a cartoon. I had some make it a cartoon. But people started calling me Bingo Boy because that was me when I was 5. And it works because it just sounds so much better when I'm on stage to say, hey, it's Roxy Wood and Bingo Boy, rather than it's Roxy Wood and Jeffrey Bowman, you know. So although I know that calling me a boy is a stretch, I mean, as far as, you know, I'm a man, but I'm still Bingo Boy, and I will never regret being Bingo Boy. I love being Bingo Boy. There, I like the dynamic of a guy and a drag queen. I just do. I call it's my Regis and Kelly thing. So on that show, Regis is like the guy, and then Kelly was like right that. Now now, like with Michael Strahan and Kelly, the two of them are both kind of like, they're kind of full of themselves and they think they're hot. So it's like the dynamic doesn't work as well. And with Ryan Seacrest, I think it's even worse because, again, you got now they're both like, cute and blonde and all that stuff. Well, when I'm up there, I'm not cute and blonde, even though I am. I mean, I am the host, and I'm the serious part. I'm like the gravity. I'm like the, all right, you guys, I'm the game show host, and then the drag queen gets to be all that, do all that drag queen stuff. So I have other guys that are just like me, same kind of personality, and that works the best. Every once in a while, I have two drag queens together, and that that dynamic is okay, but for me, I think one of the keys to our success was bringing in a guy, like having the balance of the guy and the drag queen working together and being sort of like Sonny and Cher sort of thing. Well, it's bragging. I'm not a braggadocio. Is that a word?
More in line with the unifying factor.
Well, I know. I mean, like I said, this is hard for me because, I'm sitting here telling myself how wonderful I am. My goal was to create an event that everyone could go to, especially younger people, and they could learn that working with a charity and fundraising is fun. It's not a boring dinner. It's not a gala or whatever. And that has worked. So I think the effect of Legendary Bingo on the community is that there's a bunch of younger people out there that are going to fundraising events, and from what I understand, then doing their own fundraising events and getting involved themselves. And another reason is I feel like right now we're in this time of division, where everything is me against you. Well, if you come to Legendary Bingo, you look around and it's young, old, gay, straight, white, black, brown, everybody together having a good time. And I feel like the influence of that on people, like, someone coming and saying, you know what, gay people aren't that bad, or you know what, I can be around these kind of people, because they're all having fun together. They're all trying to win. And so I feel like the lasting effect of it, and I'm not saying it's, the hugest thing in the world, but in our own little corner, I think the lasting effect of it it's helped the community to maintain being a community. Again, that sounds like I'm bragging, but.
Here's a success.
I'm trying to think of. I will never not be grateful for all of this. It kind of worked against me in a certain way because I have always kept myself not working a 9 to 5 because I wanted to write, and I always told myself I was going to be a famous writer and playwright, or I was going to write movies, and I've had some interesting almost in that area, and so this to me was a great way of making some money and staying free. And unfortunately, it's gotten so big that it takes up all of my time. It's like a 9 to 5 for me. And even though I don't do as many of the events as I used to at Hamburger Mary's, because my parents died last year, different times, and something, I don't know, all of a sudden I just didn't want to do it. And again, when I'm up there and I'm doing it, I have so much fun, and I love it, and I love that people are having a good time and they're raising money for charity, and it's like, the feel in the room is always like just this wonderful, community feeling. But I just didn't feel like putting myself out there for everybody like that. I just didn't have it as much. So at this point, again, I'm concentrating at this point. I have people doing the shows. They're wonderful. It doesn't suffer. I would never do a less than show just because I didn't feel like doing it. But I'm concentrating more on what's the future of it, and the future in having merchandise, and I signed a deal for a game show, for a TV game show, and I meet people all the time that I just met a guy last night who was like, I want to take your merchandise, and so I'm concentrating on the more of the framework of the business to keep the business going, and because honest to God, I don't see any reason why it just couldn't go on forever. You know, as we get old and die off, there would just be new drag queens coming. You know, so that's honestly, I still love it. I love doing it, but my focus is not the same as it was in the beginning.
Do you have someone lined up?